During a meeting of the Home Affairs Select Committee, Home Office Permanent Secretary Matthew Rycroft refuses to elaborate on the circumstances under which migrant boats crossing the English Channel could be pushed back to France. He's just stuttering all over the place. We will watch, react, and also go over all of the latest British political news from the last 24 hours. But first, hit the like button and subscribe to Parliament Watch to keep up to date with all things Westminster. So, as stated in the intro, a stuttering Home Office Permanent Secretary Matthew Rycroft refuses to elaborate on the circumstances under which migrant boats crossing the English Channel could be pushed back to France. They have no idea. Have a watch.
How the pushbacks in the Channel are going?
You're referring to the new maritime tactic which Border Force Maritime have been preparing and trialling, and they have not been deployed yet.
When are they going to start?
When all of the circumstances are in place to allow them to be deployed in a safe and legal way.
What circumstances are they?
Well, they are multiple, including weather, type of boat, and many other factors.
Well, can you give us some more detail? I mean, are we going to see them in the next week, in the next month, the next year, ever?
When we see them will depend on lots of different factors, so I cannot give a yes/no answer to that question.
By the time all these multiple particulars have been decided, presumably the dinghy will have made it onto the beaches of Kent or Sussex at that stage. Are you saying that you have not yet ascertained whether this policy is legal?
No, I'm not saying that.
So is this policy legal?
There is a legal base for this policy. They have identified a legal base on the basis of international and domestic law that in certain circumstances it will be legal. And
okay. And what's that?
Could I possibly add a couple of reflections just from a purely operational perspective?
Well, I don't want reflections.
But I want,
is this going to be legal or not? Because if it's not going to be legal, and you've not had robust advice it's not legal, that it's legal or not, then any amount of are the weather conditions right, is it safety, have they been trained properly, are completely academic. Unless you are going to operate this policy in a way which you know is actually not legal.
There is a legal basis to operate this policy in certain circumstances, and the legality depends on the circumstances.
Okay, so what are those circumstances?
So is that was the point? Sorry for interrupting, but that was exactly the point that I was going to make, which is, while I kind of understand the frustration in the question, what we have is a set of operational protocols which are intended to manage and incentivise the behaviour of illegal behaviour. And I'm not sure it would. So it's sorry
And just very roughly, in the last 6 months, on the numbers that have come over, we've now reached, or since the beginning of the year, 15,000, I forget how many boats. In roughly what proportion of those cases historically that have happened already, do you think you would now have the right circumstances to be able, legally, under your interpretation, to have done a pushback? Just very roughly ballpark.
A small proportion.
And a small proportion is what? 1%, 10%, 25%, 49%? Roughly what?
I'm not going to give a number.
Is it nearer 1 than 49?
Yes, but I'm not going to go further down that. Okay.
Why not?
I think we've made clear the reasons why not.
Well, I'm not clear the reasons why not. And I'm not saying for specific details of everyone that you would have been able to do it or not. I'm just asking for a very rough figure to give us an impression as whether this is a policy that is going to make a meaningful difference. Because if, frankly, we're talking about fewer than 1% of boats might just come within the parameters, then, frankly, it's not going to make a lot of difference, is it?
I totally disagree with that assessment.
What are your thoughts on this? Let me know in the comments. In other news, the Shadow Financial Secretary has cautioned that Labour's spending policies could lead to a potential rise in inflation in the future, although recent statistics indicate a decrease in the UK's inflation rate. MP Nigel Huddleston acknowledged the decline in inflation, but raised concerns about the economic choices made by the current government. Official data disclosed that UK inflation dropped to 1.7% in September, marking its lowest point in over 3 years. The Office for National Statistics, ONS, noted that reduced airfares and lower petrol prices were the key factors contributing to this decrease, which was more significant than anticipated, as economists had forecasted a decline to 1.9%. The inflation rate is now lower than the Bank of England's target of 2%, which could open the door for further cuts in interest rates next month. Darren Jones, Chief Secretary to the Treasury, remarked that the reduction in price increases would be welcome news for millions of families. In a recent interview, Huddleston criticised Labour's inflation-busting pay rises and other financial commitments, arguing that these could undermine the ongoing reduction in inflation. He asserted that the current positive economic developments are primarily due to the prior government's actions rather than Labour's current policies. However, he stressed the need for continued efforts to support working individuals, stating that the government is focused on fostering growth and restoring economic stability to fulfil its promises of change. He remarked, "It's certainly encouraging to see that inflation is decreasing once again. Much of the economic dynamics indicate that this decline is mainly attributed to the previous government's initiatives. Nonetheless, it's a positive sign, as lowering inflation was a critical strategy and goal of the last administration, which required making some tough choices. What this government has done, particularly with significant pay increases, could potentially jeopardize this positive trend. I welcome the drop in inflation, but worry about what lies ahead." Huddleston further criticised Labour's strategy, stating, "Since taking office, this government has engaged in a £10 billion spending spree on inflation-increasing pay hikes, as well as billions on GB Energy, a national wealth fund, and numerous other measures." He contended that these spending decisions could threaten the progress achieved in lowering inflation. He accused Labour of economic incompetence, arguing that their financial choices might exacerbate any existing fiscal problems they inherited. He commented, "If there's a budget shortfall, let's be clear, it's of their own making." He continued, "We're discussing billions of pounds out of a total government expenditure of £1.2 trillion. This is all within the framework of the fiscal choices a government makes regarding tax and spending policies." The Shadow Financial Secretary challenged the government's fiscal strategy, questioning, "Even if there were a multi-billion-pound shortfall that they claim to have inherited, why would they further exacerbate that issue with all of these additional expenditures? This reflects complete incompetence on the part of this government and this Chancellor." What are your thoughts on what we discussed in today's video? Let me know down in the comments section below. If you've not yet already, make sure you do drop a like on this video and subscribe to the channel for more British content. Thank you. Take care, goodbye.